Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Football Fans Show with my friends and co-hosts, Vartan and Carlos. And we're going to be talking today about a couple of things. But the first thing we're going to cover is the talk from FIFA, who are in charge of world football, of changing the structure of football. So adding in an American model. So with talking of Gianni Infantino, who is the head of FIFA, and Arsene Wenger, who's coming as head of global development for FIFA, used to be an Arsenal manager, and has been an advocate of equality across football. They've talked about lots of different things, and we're going to talk about them today. So first of all, they are talking about salary caps. Salary caps. So that means that there'll be people paid maximum a certain amount of money, so that people can't be on a massive disparity and playing the same football. So first of all, going to you, Carlos, what do you think about this idea? Do you think it's something which is really going to work, considering how the model is at the moment? What's your thoughts?
I think it could work, definitely. I've always been in favor of a salary cap, not just in football, in society in general. I think, extremely high wages, I think, are immoral. But in football, we have had salary cap in the past. We did have that model, which was in the 60s changed, and the maximum wage was removed.
I wasn't aware of that.
I'm sure knows, because it was a Fulham player who was the first to earn £100 a week, and it was Johnny Haynes once the maximum wage was taken away.
Right.
Now, we have to decide or the authorities will have to decide what is going to happen with that money that is not paid anything above that salary cap, and where it's going to go. They're talking about putting it into a fund.
Yeah.
Now, what use that fund will be given, obviously, will be a topic for discussion. But also, I think that there are various issues to be discussed regarding this. I mean, I was saying I've been in favor of a salary cap for a long time, because if someone came from another planet and saw what the fortunes we're paying our sportsmen, and the pittance we're paying people who do a very important job in society, for instance, teachers or nurses or whatever, what would they think of the human race? I mean, you could say that's being demagogic, but it's a fact. I think it's a fact. Also, as a business model, I think football is walking on a tightrope, because in order for clubs to pay such high wages, I mean, most clubs pay anything between 60 and 80% of their turnover in wages. Now, everything has to remain in place and everything has to work perfectly for that not to end in disaster. Most businesses outside of football will only try to pay between 15 and 30% of their turnover in wages. Now, when you dedicate so much of that to wages, then, if you don't qualify for the Champions League, or if you get relegated, if the TV money is reduced for whatever reason, or any other series of factors change, then you could be heading for disaster.
Sorry, just hold on. Right. No, you can. I'll just edit this out. Just take her out. The dog is mucking around.
I didn't hear it, to be honest.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they're barking at the back. I'll edit this bit out, which is fairly straightforward to do. Okay, good. No, brilliant. Okay, let's carry on. Right, let's have a little pause, and then I'll go to you, Vartan. And what's your thoughts, Vartan, on it? Because if you look at the American model, it seems to have worked, and people are still staying. There's exceptional players you want to pay good money to, but still, with a cap, at least there's a common sense approach. Well, that's why I stand on it. What's your thoughts, Vartan?
If I believe the American model is that all the money that all of them make all together, and are through TV deals and sponsorships and whatever, are all piled into one big pot, and then everyone gets a fair share of that pot. That makes incredible sense to me. you're still going to get great teams and crap teams. Now that's just going to be an organic process, I suppose. It's just going to, the draft system as well allows for, I think, the crappiest team to get the best players first and so on. I mean, it just makes it, it's a very democratic and makes a lot of sense. Football it's so spoilt at the top end. I think they try and get round that sort of arrangement with personal endorsements and I don't know if this is how it works, but if you had someone like Ronaldo in the Premier League being paid as much as, say, anyone else in the Premier League, he's still going to be a lot wealthier than anyone else because of his public or private endorsements. Now, I don't know if you're meant to incorporate those as well. That wouldn't be fair because, if he's got the pulling power and another squad player at Norwich doesn't, then why should they get the same? But salary-wise and enough to keep your organisation going-wise, I think it's supremely fair and makes a lot of sense to me. And from a spectator's point of view, I've discussed this with Carlos and lots of other people in the past. I wonder why we go to football. I sometimes wonder why we bother supporting clubs other than the top six.
That's good.
Because it's not a fair playing field. We know it isn't a fair playing field. It never has been. There's always been the Manchester Uniteds or the Tottenhams of this world, even going back a long, long time, who had more money than anyone else. But that was sort of organic as well. They earned that through having big support and, maybe just being cleverer than other teams. But that's happened over generations. But now I wonder why people go and watch a competition where you have absolutely no real chance of competing, where the best you can hope for is just staying in that league. It has its own excitements, of course, but it's not fair. And I do wonder how long it can be sustained. It's still popular. It's still, popular as ever. But how long are we going to sustain that for if every year the same old teams? I'm amazed that they get new support. Well, it just shows how fickle kids are, I suppose. They just want to be associated to winners, don't they? My next door neighbours, I'm in West London, don't forget. One kid wears a Manchester United strip, the other one wears a Liverpool strip. But they've both been down to Brentford. They both go to Brentford, I say regularly, because they look after, they look after kids and families and stuff like smaller clubs tend to. They offer great deals, give you a birthday party and all these sorts of arrangements. They're doing as much as they can to attract exactly these two lads next door, but all they're interested in is Manchester United and Liverpool. And most of that, let me tell you, comes from gaming. It's an incredible phenomenon. It's not because they're exposed to it on the telly. In fact, if they went on the telly, they probably wouldn't even recognise that Man United or Liverpool are on the telly. They wouldn't watch it. It's just a very strange world. But eventually, they'll be putting money into Manchester United and Liverpool's coffers, maybe, possibly. 100%. And that's what people are nurturing, not, bums on seats at stadiums. That's just sort of small change nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good point about the gaming. I think that's a huge part of the younger generation and who they support and who they even know the names, but only through gaming, not from watching 90 minutes of football. And I think as well, even like you said, it reminds me so much of, I'm a tennis coach for everybody out there as well. And I'm in Kent, so deep South England. And there's people there who are walking around, kids walking around Manchester City, which is northwest England, is hours away. They've probably never been to a game, wearing their shirts because they're winners, right? And they, people like to identify winners. And I think that was a phenomenon, definitely, as you said, 70s, 80s, especially the early 90s with Liverpool. There's loads of Londoners, born and bred, who support Liverpool because they were the winners, and you associate with winners, and that's the way it is. But moving on, so the other things that have been proposed, and Arsene Wenger has always been an advocate, even when he was Arsenal manager, of equality. The things that's proposed, which is going to be probably one of the most difficult things to sort out, is transfer fees, putting a cap on transfer fees. And we know that there's a lot of super agents out there, and we know that the kind of sway they have over certain clubs. The thought immediately that comes to mind is Wolverhampton Wanderers, team that was average at best in the Championship. That manager came in and he was a friend of a super agent. Look how well they're doing in the Premiership. They've been consistently well. But all the players that have come in have been exceptional players that the super agent had in his books. So, is that something that realistically can be done? What do you think, Carlos?
Well, in the case of Wolves, the danger is that a lot of the players are not actually Wolverhampton Wanderers players.
Exactly.
You see,
Exactly.
they're either on loan or their registration actually belongs to the agent.
Yeah.
So therefore, if the agent finds another club for his players, they will go, and Wolves will suddenly be without their top players, and they'll have to rebuild their team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, one of the problems with transfer fee caps is that even though I think we're all left flabbergasted when we see a player going for 100 million or 150 million,
Yeah.
the fact is that the smaller clubs rely on transfers out, on selling players. And if you limit how much they can receive for the sale of any particular player, then their budgets will be seriously hampered.
Yeah.
Now, if Manchester United can pay Brentford 50 million for a player, I mean, it's unlikely because these clubs don't normally demand that kind of transfer fee. But imagine if they do happen to develop a super player who will go for 30, 40, 50 million. That money for a small club like Brentford could mean survival for God knows how much time. Now, if you said that there would be a cap and that they could only get a certain amount for a player that they've developed, then I think the negative effects would be seen in the lower divisions, where you have clubs that rely on transfer fees more than anything else. Whereas you wouldn't really be doing anything to try to level the playing field. On the contrary, I think you might be doing the exact opposite, because big clubs can afford the big wages. They don't mind paying those huge amounts. But who would be the teams that would suffer the most? Those who don't receive the big fees.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. But if you look at, like, for example, Paul Pogba, he's a modern example. For a guy who came in for exorbitant money, the agent was paid exorbitant amount of money. Surely these things shouldn't be happening. People shouldn't be making absolute millions as an agent from actually selling on a player from one club to another. We look at the small clubs, as you said, they should be getting what they're owed, especially like even teams which are reasonable, like Southampton. But some of the amounts they're given to agents is absolutely outrageous. What's your thoughts on it, Vartan?
I think if you had a salary cap, why would you need an agent? A player already knows how much he's going to be paid. It's no point in negotiating anything else. The length of contract possibly, but then with a cap, you're probably limited with that as well. So the only thing you could use an agent for is possibly your personal endorsements and stuff. Let him take care of that. But as far as liaising with a football club and earning millions from a deal like that, why would you need an agent? If I know that the top whack I'm going to get is 160 grand a week, and an agent isn't going to negotiate that up, and it's for 3 years is the max, for instance. If there's a set of rules that everyone abides by, then I think an agent would become redundant.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, Carl, because I think that with agents as well, it would definitely, their value would actually be reduced. But I still think they still may have some purpose. But I'll be interested in your thoughts, Carlos.
I just think that you need strict regulation when it comes to that, because players will still have agents, obviously. But what we have to avoid is those cases in which clubs pay 30 or 40 million pounds in commissions. And that's why I was saying that you need strict regulations saying the agent can only get X percent, whatever, 10%, which would be huge on a million, on a 100 million pound transfer, where you're talking about 10 million. But you set a percentage that the agent will get from the buying club, and that's it. Because somehow, and I don't know how it works, but agents get far more than that 10%, which is widely regarded as the standard commission an agent should get. But then agents will get money from the buying club, they'll get money from the selling club, and they'll take money from the player as well. You see, so what we need to do in order to control that situation is to regulate it very, very strictly to make sure that these things don't happen.
Yeah, and moving on to agents, and always as well the club and the managers. The Infantino and Wenger have talked about more transparency, maybe taxing and stuff like that, but more transparency across the football ecosystem, they've called it. So I think back to, and that was a while ago, but George Graham for Arsenal, he got done. He was doing really well for Arsenal. 89, we beat Liverpool obviously, and 2-0 at theirs, and we went on to do well with him. But then he got sacked for taking a bung, and we know about all these allegations of various other people like Harry Redknapp, Terry Venables, and all the rest of it taking bungs and taking money, even though obviously most of it was unproven. But if we're going to have transparency, is it really something that the agent, the club, the coach, everybody would be behind, even though transparency would be good for football in general to make sure their reputation stays where it is? What do you think about that? Do you think it's a good idea to have more transparency, or does it really matter? Do we really care, as fans or anybody really? What do you think, Vartan?
I don't think fans do care. They just want to see the end product. They want the players. So they probably don't care. I mean, God knows what my team's been up to. Probably just as much as any other. Envelopes probably used to exchange hands. I don't know that for a fact. I've got no evidence, but it must have happened when there was less regulation. But as I said, if you did away with agents altogether, why would you need transparency? The transparency is there in the rules. This is as much as anyone in this division will get. And it's up to them. If the club wants to pay one player their whole pot, then that's not going to go down very well as far as the team's concerned. But that's up to them. Everyone knows the score. Of course, this means that you have to have those same rules have to apply to the whole of Europe, for instance, or the whole world football, because otherwise, all the players will go off to Italy like they used to when Italy was the biggest payer. So, you have to have parity in all the leagues, otherwise this just isn't going to work. Who's going to come to that sort of agreement?
Exactly. I agree.
But it would be it would be a better product for it. It would be a better product for it. Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that, Carlos, that there'll be loads of pushback surely from around the world, because obviously it's FIFA, right? As we just talked about, from around the world, that actually we like to keep things private. Why should we let everyone know what we're doing? Like Vartan even just said, some money may be spent on their star player, which they don't want to know about, or even things like we've seen it before, sponsors with some of the betting clubs. That might be controversial as well. So does football really need transparency? Does it really going to change anything?
I think that the more money an industry generates, the less transparency those involved in that industry want, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's vital that there is transparency, because transparency will lead to a stricter adherence to the law. Now, we don't know what's going on, but we suspect that some illegalities are occurring.
Of course.
So if that's the case, then I think we do need transparency. It can only be good for football, as it can only be good for any industry, I think. Also, what we need is for clubs, I think, to be more self-sufficient. I think that's what financial fair play was trying to do in order to stop benefactors coming in, wealthy owners putting in money, and then clubs living beyond their means. But for instance, we were talking the other day of the parachute payments. Even though they are a way of protecting clubs who are on high wages because they're in the Premier League from going bankrupt once they get relegated, in a way, what it's doing is it's rewarding failure.
Yeah.
You get relegated and you get £100 million.
Yeah.
So in some cases, clubs, might actually want to get promoted and relegated.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Norwich is that's why you see. I think what we need is a stricter control on football finances. Make sure that football is self-sufficient, that it doesn't exceed its means, that wages are controlled, that agents' commissions are also controlled. So many aspects of the financial world, football financial world, need controlling. But I suspect that we will never see that.
Okay, Carlos, so what do you think about financial fair play? Was it a success or was it a failure? What do you think?
I think the jury's still out. There are people who complain about certain clubs that seem to be getting away with a lot, whereas other clubs are immediately punished for exceeding their limits. So I'm not sure financial fair play is being all that fair. I tend to agree with those people who are critical of how it's being applied. Now, I think there have been cases of large clubs that have been punished. Atletico Madrid had a transfer ban. Manchester City now are awaiting to hear the result of their appeal. But on the whole, the idea obviously is excellent. I think it's what's needed in football, because we were saying that regulation is required. We need to control spending. But I just wonder how strict financial fair play has been. And I think maybe it needs clearer guidelines and a clearer application. And once we know exactly, I don't think many people, if you ask many people what financial fair play is, they have a rough idea. But I think they couldn't really explain this in detail. And I think we all need to be clear on that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I think, like you said, it still needs a lot of work. If it's going to continue, we'll see what happens along the way. Well, thank you for listening to myself, Vartan, and Carlos. Vartan had to go, but thank you for your thoughts, and I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on what we've talked about today. Is the salary cap, transfer cap, and all the things we've talked about, are they fair? Are they right? Are they good for football? Does it make any difference for us as a fan? Remember to like and subscribe the page. Thank you for listening, and bye-bye.